Chapter 8. I will get the dunder-headed varlets who trust my castle, Mordred growled. I will stretch them on the rag until they snap. Heavy footsteps sounded up the stairs. Wiglaf swallowed. Angus was trembling. He's not in a very good mood. Worm's little crest flattened against his head in fear. Quick, said Wiglaf. Let's get Worm into the dorm room. Wiglaf found an eel bit in his pocket. He waved it in front of Worm, who trotted after him. Wiglaf tossed the eel into the dorm room, waited for Worm to bounce inside, and then slammed the door shut. Just in time, too. Mordred came storming down the hallway. His face was a frightening shade of red. Those castle-wrecking neighbors can run, but they can't hide. Not from me, Mordred the Marvelous. Mordred's glowing eyes lit upon the boys. Nephew Wiglaf, why aren't you scrubbing? We are looking for the varlets who trashed your castle, uncle, said Angus. Ah, good, Mordred nodded. All of a sudden, a loud thump sounded inside the dorm room. Wiglaf's heart began to thump too. Egad! Mordred looked over his shoulder. What was that? What was that, uncle? Said Angus, as the thumping grew louder. That noise, said Mordred. Noise? Said Angus. He turned to Wiglaf. Did you hear a noise? Noise? Said Wiglaf, as something banged to the floor. Dad! Cried Mordred. Surely you heard that. What, uncle? Angus looked puzzled. Do you think you heard something? Mordred's violet eyes bulged. His face turned pale. Nephew, are you suggesting that I am hearing things? It is possible, uncle, Angus said, looking concerned. Then to Wiglaf's horror, the class 1 dorm room door flew open, and there stood Worm. The peopling's eye lit up when he saw the boys. He grinned, showing his pointy fang. Mordred let out a large sigh. The inspectors, the pressure, he said. The wretched student who bring me no gold. The endless scrub-a-thon. And now this wreckage. It would break any man. Worm began bouncing in the doorway. Don't turn around, sir, Wiglaf chanted inside his head. Just don't turn around. You need rest, uncle, said Angus. Worm hooked his claws on his lips and pulled his mouth into a wide grin. A nap might help, sir, Wiglaf suggested. Let me walk you back to your office, uncle. Angus took him by the elbow. You could lie down on, Worm cried. Sir. Mordred whipped his head. He froze as he stared at the peopling, who had crossed his eyes, stuck out his tongue, and was wiggling his pink ears. Good King Ken's breeches, Mordred cried. You see it, don't you, boy? See what, uncle? Said Angus. Mordred's violet eyes circled once inside their sockets. Then the large headmaster sagged against the wall. Hearing things, he mumbled. Seeing things. Must lie down, must rest, must pull self together. So saying, he staggered off down the hallway. Crowed Worm, thinking he'd won whatever game he'd been playing. Wiglaf and Angus shoved Worm into the dorm room. We were so lucky, said Angus. Oh no, groaned Wiglaf. Worm was making a nest. Worm had stripped the blankets off all the cots and piled them in the middle of the room. Lots of cots had been overturned in the process. Erica's pillow was lipped. Feathers was everywhere. Wiggy, said Angus. What's that on Erica's Sir Lancelot rug? Wiglaf went to take a look. Peopling too, peopling poo, he cried, a big pile of it, right on Sir Lancelot's head. Dr. Plug had been right about that. Pew! Oh man, cried Angus, worms cleaned out my stash. He shot the peopling a dirty look. At least he didn't eat the marshmallows. But Worm only jumped up and down on Angus's cot, bubbling. Mommy, sir, mommy, sir. Wiglaf figured this was as good a time as any to bring up what he'd been thinking about. Angus, it's time to take Worm back. No, we can't keep him, said Angus. I will train him not to wreck stuff. Besides, you are the one who wanted to raise a peopling. And we did it, said Wiglaf. But we can't keep a huge dragon, Angus. Worm gets bigger every day. He can fly now. He can feed himself. He will be fine. Angus folded his arm across his chest. Let's just get this mess cleaned up. Angus gathered the blankets while Wiglaf worked on getting the poo out of Erica's carpet. Even Worm helped by turning the cots right side up again. Wiglaf, Worm said, while Angus went to lunch. Angus stayed with him while Wiglaf went to supper. Then, just before the other boys were due back, Wiglaf and Angus tucked Worm into Wiglaf's bed. Angus covered the peopling with his blanket. The peopling looked up at him. Sir, I'm going to tell you a bedtime story, Worm, Wiglaf said. Once upon a time, there was a purple egg. Worm murmured, Mommy. He closed his eyes. Two boys found the egg and took it back to their school, Wiglaf went on. And out you came, Worm, said Angus. Worm's eye popped open. Wow. Out came a peopling, Angus went on. He was no bigger than a little bunny. The boys took good care of him, and the peopling grew and grew and grew. The boys heard faint snoring sounds. Worm was blowing little soap bubbles from his nose. Now, except for the long green snout, the dragon looked like any sleeping DSA student. Angus pulled the blanket up just over his head. At last, the puppiling grew too big to stay at the school. Wiglaf picked up the story even though Worm was fast asleep. He looked straight at Angus as he spoke. So the boys took him back to the dark forest. The peopling flew off. He found the other dragons to play with, and lived happily ever after. The peopling smiled in his sleep. He murmured a faint, ha ha. Angus sighed. You win, he said. We will take him back tonight. After all the Class 1 boys were sound asleep, Wiglaf rolled out from under Angus's cot, where he'd been hiding. Angus woke Worm, and the three of them made their quiet way out of the DSA. I hope one won't be scared in the forest, said Angus, as they walked through the starlit night. Worm bounced along happily between them. Every once in a while, he spread his wings and flew part of the way. At last, they reached the bank of the Swarm River. Snack time, said Angus. He pulled 2 marshmallows from his pocket, stuck them on a stick, and held them out to Worm. Flame up, he said. Whoosh! Worm toasted them until they were perfect, crispy, but not burned. The boys were licking marshmallow goo off their fingers when they heard a strange noise. Ha ha ha! What is that? Now Worm spread his wings and answered, Ha, ha, ha. Wiglaf heard the flapping wings. He and Angus hunkered down. Out of the dark, a pair of peoplings came flying down. They looked just like Worm, except that they had purple ears, and they were a little bigger. Worm's sisters, whispered Wiglaf. I guess Worm was the runt. The three peoplings bounced around, circling each other. They took turns shooting flames from their noses. They hooted their wild cry. Wiglaf knew he was seeing something that few had ever seen. He just hoped that he and Angus might live to tell about it. Then Wiglaf's hair began blowing in the breeze as the peoplings rose into the air. They circled once over Wiglaf and Angus's heads. "Mommy, sir," called Worm. He glided down to the boys. He crossed his eyes, stuck out of his tongue, and wiggled his ears. Then up he flew to join his sisters, and the three peoplings disappeared over the dark forest.